20. Captain Gregory of the Missing Persons Bureau laid my card down on his wide flat desk and arranged it so that its edges exactly paralleled the edges of the desk. He studied it with his head on one side, grunted, swung around in his swivel chair and looked out of his window at the barred top floor of the Hall of Justice half a block away. He was a burly man with tired eyes and the slow, deliberate movements of a night watchman. His voice was toneless, flat, and uninterested. "Private Dick, eh?" he said, not looking at me at all, but looked out of his window. Smoke whisked from the blackened bowl of a briar that hung on his eye tooth. "What can I do you for?" "I'm working for General Guy Sternwood, 3765 Alta Brea Crescent, West Hollywood." Captain Gregory blew a little smoke from the corner of his mouth without removing the pipe. "On what?" "Not exactly on what you're working on, but I'm interested. I thought you could help me." "Help you out on what?" "General Sternwood's a rich man," I said. "He's an old friend of the DA's father. If he wants to hire a full-time boy to run errands for him, that's no reflection on the police. It's just a luxury he is able to afford himself." "What makes you think I'm doing anything for him?" I didn't answer that. He swung around slowly and heavily in his swivel chair and put his large feet flat on the bare linoleum that covered his floor. His office had a musty smell of years of routine. He stared at me bleakly. "I don't want to waste your time, Captain," I said and pushed my chair back about 4 inches. He didn't move. He kept on staring at me out of his washed-out, tired eyes. "You know the DA?" "I've met him. I worked for him once. I know Bernie Oles, his chief investigator, pretty well." Captain Gregory reached for the phone and mumbled into it. "Get me Oles at the DA's office." He sat holding the phone down on his cradle. Moments passed. Smoke drifted from his pipe. His eyes were heavy and motionless like his hand. The bell tinkled and he reached for my card with his left hand. "Oles?" "Al Gregory at headquarters. A guy named Philip Marlowe is in my office. His card says he's a private investigator. He wants information from me." "Yeah? What does he look like?" "Okay, thanks." He dropped the phone and took his pipe out of his mouth and tamped the tobacco with the brass cap of a heavy pencil. He did it carefully and solemnly, as if that was as important as anything he would have to do that day. He leaned back and stared at me some more. "What you want?" "An idea of what progress you're making, if any." He thought that over. "Reagan?" he asked finally. "Sure." "Know him?" "I never saw him. I hear he's a good-looking Irishman in his late 30s. That he was once in the liquor racket. That he married General Sternwood's older daughter and that they didn't click. I'm told he disappeared about a month back." Sternwood ought to think himself lucky instead of hiring private talent to beat it around in the tall grass. The general took a big fancy to him. Such things happen. The old man is crippled and lonely. Reagan used to sit around with him and keep him company. "What do you think you can do that we can't do?" "Nothing at all, and so far as finding Reagan goes. But there's a rather mysterious blackmail angle. I want to make sure Reagan isn't involved. Knowing where he is or isn't might help." "Brother, I'd like to help you, but I don't know where he is." He pulled down the curtain and that's that. "Pretty hard to do against your organization, isn't it, Captain?" "Yeah, but it can be done for a while." He touched the belt button on the side of his desk. A middle-aged woman put her head at a side door. "Get me the file on Terrence Reagan, Abba." The door closed. Captain Gregory and I looked at each other in some more heavy silence. The door opened again, and the woman put a tabbed green file on his desk. Captain Gregory nodded her out, put a pair of heavy horn-rimmed glasses on his veined nose, and turned the papers in the file over slowly. I rolled a cigarette around my fingers. "He blew on the 16th of September, he said. The only thing important about that is it was the chauffeur's day off and nobody saw Reagan take his car out. It was late afternoon, though." We found the car 4 days later in a garage belonging to a ritzy bungalow court place near the Sunset Towers. A garage man reported it to the stolen car detail, said it didn't belong there. The place is called the Casa de Oro. There's an angle to that I'll tell you about in a minute. We couldn't find out anything about who put the car in there. We print the car but don't find any prints that are on file anywhere. The car in that garage don't vibe with foul play, although there's a reason to suspect foul play. It jives with something else I'll tell you about in a minute. I said, that jibes with Eddie Marr's wife being on the missing list. He looked annoyed. Yeah. We investigate the tenants and find she's living there. Left about the time Reagan did, within 2 days anyway. A guy who sounds a bit like Reagan had been seen with her, but we don't get a positive identification. It's damn funny in this police racket how an old woman can look out of a window and see a guy running and pick him out of a lineup 6 months later, but we can show hotel help a clear photo and they just can't be sure. That's one of the qualifications for good hotel help, I said. Yeah. Eddie Marrs and his wife didn't live together, but they were friendly, Eddie says. Here's some of the possibilities. First off, Reagan carried 15 grand, packed it in his clothes all the time. Real money, they tell me. Not just a top card and a bunch of hay. That's a lot of jack, but this Reagan might be the boy to have it around so you could take it out and look at it when somebody was looking at him. Then again, maybe he wouldn't give a damn. His wife says he never made a nickel off old man Sternwood except room and board and packet 120 his wife gave him. Tie that for an ex-leg in the rich gravy. It beats me, I said. Well, here we are with a guy who ducks out and has 15 grand in his pants and folks know it. Well, that's money. I might duck out myself if I had 15 grand and me with 2 kids in high school. So the first thought is somebody rolls him for it and rolls him too hard. So they have to take him out in the desert and plant him among the cactuses. But I don't like that too well. Reagan carried a gat and had plenty of experience using it. And not just in a greasy-faced liquor mob. I understand he commanded a whole brigade in the Irish Troubles back in 1922. Or whenever it was. A guy like that wouldn't be white meat to a heister. Then his car being in that garage makes whoever rolled him know he was sweet on Eddie Marr's wife, which he was, I guess. But it ain't something every pool room bum would know. Got a photo? I asked. Him, not her. That's funny too. There's a lot of funny angles to this case here. He pushed a shiny print across the desk and I looked at an Irish face that was more sad than merry and more reserved than brash. Not the face of a tough guy and not the face of a man who could be pushed around much by anybody. Straight dark brows and strong bone under them, a forehead wide rather than high, a mat of dark clustering hair, a thin short nose, a white mouth, a chin that had strong lines but was small for the mouth, a face that looked a little taut, the face of a man who would move fast and play for keeps. I passed the print back. I would know that face if I saw it. Captain Gregory knocked his pipe out and refilled it and tamped the tobacco down with his thumb. He lit it, blew smoke, and began to talk again. Well, there would be people who would know he was sweet on Eddie Marr's frau. Besides Eddie himself. For a wonder he knew it, but he don't seem to give a damn. We checked him pretty thoroughly around that time. Of course, Eddie wouldn't have knocked him off out of jealousy. The setup would point to him too obviously. It depends how smart he is, I said. He might try to double bluff. Captain Gregory shook his head. If he's smart enough to get by in his racket, he's too smart for that. I get your idea. He pulls a dumb play because he thinks we wouldn't expect him to pull the dumb play. From a police angle, that's wrong, because he'd have us in his hair so much it would interfere with his business. You might think a dumb play would be smart. I might think so. The rank and file wouldn't. They make his life miserable. I've ruled it out. If I'm wrong, you could prove it on me and I'll eat my chair cushion. Till then, I'm leaving Eddie in the clear. Jealousy's a bad motive for his type. Top-flight racketeers have business brains. They learn to do things that are good policy and let personal feelings take care of themselves. I'm leaving that out. What are you leaving in? A dame and Reagan himself. Nobody else. She was a blonde then. But she won't be now. We don't find her car, so they probably left in it. They had a long start on us, 14 days. Except for the car of Reagan's, I don't figure we'd have got the case at all. Of course, I'm used to them that way, especially in good class families. And of course, everything I've done has had to be under the hat. He leaned back and thumbed the arms of his chair with the heels of his large, heavy hands. I don't see nothing to do but wait, he said. We've got readers out, but it's too soon to look for results. Reagan had 15 grand we know of. The girl had some, maybe a lot in rocks, but they'll run out of those someday. Reagan will cash a check, drop a marker, write a letter. They're in a strange town, and they've got new names, but they've got the same old appetites. They gotta get back in the fiscal system. What did the girl do before she married Eddie Mars? Torture. Can't you get any old professional photos? No. Eddie must have had some, but he won't loosen up. He wants her let out. He wants her let alone. I can't make him. He's got friends in town or he wouldn't be what he is. He grunted. Any of this do any good? I said, you'll never find either of them. The Pacific Ocean is too close. What I said about my chair cushion still goes. We'll find them. It may take time. It could take a year or two. General Sternwood may not live that long, I said. We've done all we could, brother. If he wants to put out a reward and spend some money, we might get results. The city don't give me the kind of money it takes. His large eyes peered at me and his scratchy eyebrows moved. You serious about thinking Eddie put them both down? I laughed. No. I was just kidding. I think what you think, Captain. That Reagan ran away with a woman who meant more to him than a rich wife he didn't get along with. Besides, she isn't rich yet. You met her, I suppose. Yes. She'd make a jazzy weekend, but she'd be wearing for a steady diet. He grunted and I thanked him for his time and information and left. A gray Plymouth sedan tailed me away from the city hall. I gave it a chance to catch up with me on a quiet street. It refused the offer, so I shook it off and went about my business.